some core folks that have been able to be at the church during the day, and all of that. Will you join me in welcoming Patrick Jackowitz? Patrick started with us on the West Wing in November, December of 2024, and has been with us all throughout this process. And I can tell you, we would not have understood how to handle any of this if it hadn't been for Patrick's leadership. We didn't know how to even interview the right roofer. We didn't know what we needed on the inside. We didn't know the right things to say to the insurance company. So one, will you join me in just thanking Patrick for his ministry and love towards us? And beloved, in this sheet, you'll notice that there is some information about the finances, all the money that's come in. And we list that the roofer is giving us a substantial gift in terms of in-kind services for all of the scaffolding that's around our steeple and things like that. I want you to know we had some issues last week, and Patrick that company has also given us, like I said, in addition to the consulting services that we've had, they've also made an in-kind gift to us in terms of materials and things like that. So again, will you just join me in thanking and blessing Patrick for all that he's done? Patrick, I'm going to out you and let folks know that he grew up in the Geneva United Methodist Church. So really, he's one of us. Amen? All right. So I'm going to get out your way. The way this is going to go, we're going to present all the way up until the time that Patrick goes. We're going to take a little break. Not a little break, but Patrick will answer questions after his presentation, because remember I told you he's got to get out of here. And then we'll go on with the rest of the presentation. And so we have lots of photos to show you about what's going on and what's progressed and all of those things. So, Carol, are you first up? Nope. Who's the first up? Al? Well, you're first. Oh, I'm first. Oh. All right. So, beloved, as I said, we're just going to have a sort of a recap of everything that we've been through. The look at what's been accomplished. The big agenda item on the thing today is to talk about the steeple, to talk about when we get to come back home. We also want to share with you all of the ways that people have blessed us financially, and then we want to talk about what do we need to do so that we can get back home and do the next new thing that God is calling us to. Who has the next sheet? Not me? Oh. I have the. Oh, let me get out the way. Okay.
I know you can all follow around in your sheets on the slides that you've got in front of you. But a year ago today, some of us didn't have much sleep the night before. The roof blew off the building. Some of you have seen these pictures before. Upper left-hand corner, you see that's the east elevation of the church. 2/3 of the roof is missing. I found most of it in Center Street. The center picture. Yeah, think blowing up. Yeah, that's just people. That's people coming to see what was going on. The gentleman on the right came from the conference. They are disaster specialists for the conference. And they came right away to offer their expertise, and they hung around for several days, helping us take the first steps to get dried out and get started. This is the bishop. He was here that very morning. He left a check behind. He prayed with us. He remembered this was the church he'd been inducted into our conference. He felt very much an attachment to this church. He and his wife came. The picture over here is the beginnings of putting the church together. You notice the pews are out at that point, but they're still covering things and drying things out. If you haven't, and most of you haven't, but if you haven't been in our sanctuary yet, the bottom on the right shows the scaffolding going up. The entire sanctuary floor, from balcony to balcony, from front to back, is scaffolded. There's what they call the dance floor up on top. I can touch the ceiling when I go up to the top of the scaffold and get on the dance floor. I do not like this. I tell people I've been up there twice, my first time and my last time. But that has made it possible for the tradesmen to go up and into the attic and replace our air conditioning systems, all which were destroyed. I might add our aging air conditioning systems, which were all destroyed. We now have brand new ones. It's allowed them to replace the insulation and do all the things that they had to do above the ceiling, but below the roof. I've said this so many times, when you sit in our church, our ceiling kind of is peaked like this, but if you look at the roof from the outside, it's peaked like this. There's clearly a space inside there. I saw that for my first time by sticking my head through a hole in the ceiling and looking into the attic, and I did not like that either. But fortunately, there are men who are willing to go up there and do the work. And what? I got dragged up there by Jen and Carol, who apparently don't have the same relationship with height that I do. But that's what brought us this far. Let's move on.
Al, let me show him your notes. These are Al's notes for speaking. He's a wonderful speaker. Here's what mine looks like. And that's what it looks like inside of here, too. So, but anyway. Pastor Felicia has said this time and time again, that our worship has never stopped. And our structure that we function under with the governance board, and then we have our ministry teams. And within our ministry teams, they are so critical and so important. We want to just identify and note the work and the extra struggle that they've had to go through just to keep their areas and our church going. So with regard to worship, Cindy is the coordinator for worship. And I'm just going to ask anybody else in the room here, raise your hand that you serve on the worship team. You plan. Kat is on the worship team. Kat, you've had to do some tap dancing, haven't you, when we've moved from one church to a next and then to here. Our technology gentleman in the back. And yeah, Marcy, did you raise your hand? Marcy's here. Yeah. Anybody else that I'm missing on the worship? Just the planning every week, and Karen with the flowers and keeping that going. There are so many things behind the scenes that have continued to happen. Our nurture program. I want to take this moment, because everybody is sitting here, to thank Jane and Kathy for when we first went to the single board model. They stepped up, and in many cases prior to that have devoted their life to the nurturing and the education, the classes, the programs, the many things, and not just within United Women of Faith. I'm talking about through and for our church for all these years. I want to thank you for that. And we have someone who has volunteered to join us, and you will hear about that someday soon, to be that nurture coordinator who has a heart and a passion for those programs that come beneath that. Our outreach, we have been able to add ministries. The game nights, Diana Alfaro and Kim French have co-chaired the outreach. And so lots of things that we've done, not just those that are listed. We have the game nights. We did Pride Parade. We did the 4th of July parade. Pastor Felicia was part of a 4-night program on Martin Luther King that took place in the library. All of these things continue to keep going on. Bible studies, whether they're small group or whether they're the reflection group that's been going on for years, we continue to do that. And then with regard to witness, Ariane and Jira are here, and they step forward and have really worked hard. They're going to take us into the next century of technology, and a lot of exciting things will be coming down the pike with regard to that. Our church staff, we have gone through 3 custodial building engineers in the time since the building was taken down. So Dwayne Worth, and then Vince has recently expanded his work and has had to retire from that. And maybe, Al, when you get up to speak again, you can talk about our new gentleman who is joining us.
Good guy, ready to go.
Yep, he is ready to go. So with that being said, I will say that as I look out over everybody that's in this room, the shoulders that we have been able to stand on, so many of you here, and we thank you for that. But we got to keep going, and we can do it together. So thank you.
I do want to continue in that same vein. I feel like through this last year experience, I feel like I'm maybe one of the luckiest women in this church. And that I wouldn't have said that a year ago when I stood here in the morning and we had the prayer vigil. But this last the year has been an unbelievable faith journey. And it started by emergency response or whatever. And for the last 365 days, and we've been in meetings or at the church, maybe 300 of them, every meeting starts off, every experience starts off with the sermon that you heard this morning about trusting God and loving God and stepping out in faith. And He didn't bring us this far to let us go away. So I have to say, I want to thank for your leadership faithfully. When we say worship and Bible study has expanded, we've had one of the most intense experiences. And I said it's been really remarkable, too, that every time we start a meeting with our contractors, and I can't tell you how important this is. Now, I've gotten, so I'll ask him, but we always ask, can we start in prayer? And to a person that we've met with, we start our construction meetings in prayer. Patrick has been a big part of this. And so this has been a very moving, faithful experience, and I feel very lucky to have been able to be a part of this. I do, at this point, too, want to do a shout out to Amy Diedrichson and Pastor Felicia. When Carol talks about the ministries that have continued and gone on and expanded, a large part of that coordination goes through our office and goes through Amy. And she has been magnificent in that she's the day-to-day and ministries that haven't stopped. But in addition to that, she's like our financial conduit. The money input, output, all goes through Amy. The contacting of contractors. She has a second job. The restoration of our building she's one of the chief coordinators, and she and Pastor Felicia, we said, if we walked a mile in each of these people's shoes, this has been like a magnificent experience. And some of us have suffered some of the most difficult days in our lives in the last year, losing loved ones or going through illness or whatever. And without fail, at least from my perspective and our perspective, Pastor Felicia and Amy have been there every step of the way to help coordinate what needs to be done. So that's the Amy shout out. My section does not have anything to do with Amy, but can we give her another hand? Because she will see this. And she will know this. What we've completed so far, if you on the slide on page 3, what we've done so far in the building, it kind of has been a little bit lost in the shuffle that we had a disaster, a $675,000 disaster in November of '24. And it was the window was left open in the frigid temperature, and our sprinkler system, a pipe burst in the west wing, and it wasn't located. The sprinkler ran on full power for over an hour. When the fire department made it relatively quickly, they weren't able, because of the age of our building, the main water valve had rusted shut, and we had to get a plumber, I think, is the one that came in and did it. And again, we kind of lost that in the thing, and Patrick came in, and he was Al's first call, and Patrick came in and he looks at it, and we're like this and tearing our shirts and wringing our knuckles, and Pat goes, "This isn't that big a disaster." And from then on, he's helped shepherd and nurture us along the way. And from a governance board perspective, our family was going through a health crisis, and one of the first things that happened, Al called and said, I will keep you up to date and on this, and said, you take care of you, and Pastor Felicia and I got this. And they, for the largest part of the reconstruction, Alan and Pastor Felicia shepherded us that like seamlessly. people didn't even hardly know what was going on. So the West Wing was completed, and from insurance, we received $675,000. There was $4,200 that was not covered, and it was basically for the painting of the not the parlor. Was it the parlor or was it the fellowship hall?
There was some extra painting
There-
that we did that wasn't insurance covered.
That wasn't insurance covered, and so we were able to use money in the Building Development Fund, which is the fund that all the monies go through in our church, to, whether they were private donation, whether they, well, and we'll talk about that, go through our Building Development Fund so that we can get this church back up and running the way God intended it to. And then the other thing that's been 2/3 completed ahead of schedule, only because we had the disaster, was the money from our capital campaign, the phone security and text system is 2/3 the way done because the walls were taken out. We got our contractor, AJ came from Atlanta, from Virginia, and he was able to get, without having to take the walls out, which would have been part of the task of installing security phones and internet, he was able to work around that because the walls were out. So it was an unexpected trip, and again, we're just like, oh no, how are we going to manage this? And you know what? God has provided. God has provided, and I'll speak to it in just a minute, is how he provided. But it's been amazing that the building was in the shape that it was. The West Wing wasn't complete, the roof blows off. So there were several months that there was simultaneous construction, mitigation and construction going on in our building, and you won't believe where we're at now. Next, just one of the ways that God provided when we had to step out, we didn't know where the money was, and it wasn't sitting in the bank waiting to be used, was through grant writing. And this is a special skill set that Pastor Felicia has brought to us that we didn't, when we interviewed her to be our senior pastor, we didn't say, how are you as a grant writer? It turns out she's magnificent, because we have received, right at the very beginning, we received a $10,000 grant from the United Methodist Church, the denomination, and in addition to receiving that $10,000 grant, which they gave to us, and on their suggestion, or on their really encouragement, it went right into the Building Development Fund, and that we had some immediate needs right away that the insurance company, we had a roofing company that came in initially to do that immediate patch when it was still pouring down and the sky was still, and they weren't the type of roofers we needed to complete the job, but we were able to take care of them and make them whole, even though they underbid the job. But we were able to not destroy a company because they made a mistake in estimation, and tried to help us out in the short term. That $10,000 grant came from the denomination. So whenever we talk about conference, helping us out, stepping up, we also received 2 UMCOR rapid response volunteers that stayed with us the first 2 days and were invaluable in what do you do in this next moment. You get somebody to sit out at the front door and don't let anybody else in. We had people, well, we've talked about that, strolling through the building. Nothing was secured, but they helped us in that way. Then we received a $50,000 grant from the National Sacred Spaces Trust, and they were the large part. The grant was written to upgrade our lighting system, and we also, Pastor Felicia wrote and received a grant, $5,000 grant from Cary United Methodist Church for the technology. So this was money we never knew how to get, we didn't expect to get it, and we've gotten it. After being up in the roof, or being up in the attic last week, and seeing the scaffolding this wide with little strips that Dwayne and Ron Barkley were using to change the lighting in this system, this was not a nice upgrade. This was a life safety mandatory experience. We walked in that area. Those planks were this wide, and those 2 men for years now, and I used to sit up in the balcony and say, when are we going to get that light changed? It's been out for ages. Well, now I know why. It is literally life or death. It's a 100-year-old system. So that is, catwalks, nothing to hold on to. It was remarkable. With that having been said, so we've had grants going on, we've had lots of work being completed, and now the man of the hour, Patrick Jackowitz, that I'm telling you, God sent him to us, and he gets embarrassed when we say it. God sent this man to, and this Pro, what do you call it, group? What is your business? Servpro, that on that day, when the pipe burst, sent us Patrick, and he's been with us by our side. And one of the things we've asked from the very beginning, and Carol and Al and I, and Pastor Felicia, we ask a million questions about things because we don't know. But we said if we can't explain it to our congregation, then how can they trust us? So he's been unbelievably patient and unbelievably kind, and now it's up to him, and you'll be able to ask him questions yourself. Patrick.
It's actually about 1,000,001 questions, let's just be honest. So I want to first say good morning. Sorry it's rainy, but it kind of gave me a little bit of a flashback this morning from a year ago today. I drove by just to make sure it was all still there. So it is, don't worry. I understand that being on the outside looking in is very, very difficult. It's very, a lot of concerns get brought up. You don't know what you don't know. Right? And for safety purposes, obviously, you're kept on the outside for now. But I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that your board has been so forward with getting things done, speaking up when they need to, listening when they need to, and then taking action when they absolutely have to, when they feel like certain things are not happening with certain sections of this project. So they've obviously given me kudos, but please give them kudos because they've been fantastic for now over a year, working with them on the west side and now obviously the sanctuary. So if you would. So. I wanted to briefly, I've got my own notes, so I can rival Jen, right? So, but just a brief time lapse so that you can kind of understand some of the difficulties that have taken place, right? So again, a year ago today, I was actually standing in your attic in that giant opening looking out going, oh, well, this will be fun. So a year ago today, we were doing that. I actually turned in our estimates in July. Okay, for rebuild purposes. We actually had our first, we'll call it confrontational walkthrough, only because we received a bid back that was not adequate in September. So again, I supplied one in July. Then in September, we had a first walkthrough to make sure that the scopes were equal on both parts, both the insurance and my own. Right.
They submitted something, we've had to wait a month or two for an answer, and then it's strong negotiation, you might want to say fight, but they were $1 million off in the beginning, and Al and Amy and I had to even submit affidavits saying that our building wasn't all cracked up and messed up and all of that, and so I just want you to know how much work Patrick's had to do to get us what it is that we need to have just to get our building back to the way it was. Because the insurance company didn't want to do that. They wanted to throw up drywall in places and patch stuff and do all of that. They were $1 million off in that first bid.
Right. When we met in September, if you remember, I mentioned it is a game. It's not a game to you. It's not a game to your board members. It's not really a game to me, but it's just the game. So that's why they came in 2/3 less than what I had not suggested, but what I had estimated to get your church back together. So we had that walkthrough in September. We then met at Cornerstone in September. We had our first, I'll call it real adjustment in October 15th, excuse me. We then had a walkthrough because they wanted to bring in a third party to negotiate how we could fix your pews. I won that one too. That was on the 17th. And then first payments weren't made until roughly November of 2024. Or excuse me, 25. Sorry. 2025. So when hopefully in your head you're seeing here that this has not just been a sit around and wait project. I really wasn't able to start until about mid-November. And then we had the holidays, and of course, nobody works on the holidays. If you're in certain industries, you know, people take off for weeks on end. So we were able to get certain things done, but not a whole lot. But things that have been completed. The HVAC was actually completed over the holidays. They were able to squeeze me in. I begged, borrowed, and stealed and made sure that they could get that done. The electrical, many facets of that electrical project have been completed. New lights have been installed underneath the balcony, which had to deal with conduit and running it to your box. I had to fight off the city. Sorry if there's any city members around. I had to fight off the city because they were hoping to upgrade your entire electrical system, which had nothing to do with the insurance or the claim itself. And if you've ever had to pull a permit, you know what I mean. So they're very eager to try to get you to upgrade things. I've had to argue again. It's a 100-year-old church. It had nothing wrong with it other than the roof is gone. Could we at least pull some strings here and make sure that we're not trying to make this a $7 million project of trying to renovate a church, of which they're going to get stuck with the funds because insurance at some point stops. They go, yeah, sorry, we're done. So again, those were many, many conversations with government officials in the permits and building department that we had to work with and work through. So again, HVAC was completed. The flooring materials and the flooring materials had been approved and ordered. I got an email this week. They're sitting on a shelf waiting for installation. Awesome. We don't have to wait for that. As soon as I give them the go-ahead, they're going to come in and be able to do that work. Again, like I said, the electrical system had been taken care of. Plaster had actually started. I was able to convince the plaster company to be able to kind of slip in between some of my other trades so that I could try to shrink the overall time frame. So the southeast and southwest stairwells are done currently. They have been completed, so the one on the southeast that had the large limestone block come in through the ceiling is done. It's ready. I need some trim work done, but those two are actually completed and done. What else? Down the southeast stairwell is completed. Underneath the balcony now is no longer open. It is completely sealed off with plaster. So that is done. They've started filling in some of the, what I'm going to call troughs that we cut into the walls on the east and the west sides of the sanctuary to dry behind the wall cavities. Those are starting to get filled in. And I don't know if you guys had actually looked, but they've started to install some of the mesh on the southwest corner all the way to the ceiling. So they are moving very, very quickly, which is very, very pleasing to me, because as much as I enjoy sitting here and saying, hey, it's been a year, I really, really, really wanted you in earlier. So being able to see that these things are starting to kind of really speed up for me is a godsend, okay? Let's see. So that's basically what has been done so far. What is going to be done now moving forward? This Wednesday, the ceiling itself is going to start getting refinished. So they're going to be sanding, staining, and getting it back to the way it was. So it's kind of a rough cut cedar. It's very beautiful, frankly. Although you guys get to see it from 45 feet away, I get to see it from 6 feet away.
Especially up close.
Yeah, especially up close. It's really nice. Al loves it. So, but they're going to be finishing that. That's going to take a few weeks. At some point, I'm going to fill in the rest of the plaster group. They're going to start working on all the walls. So there's actually, you guys will get an email about it, more plaster that has to come down because it was affected. It shouldn't affect my time frame, but they're thinking that's about a 6 to 7 week process. Okay, so if I overlap, we're now talking about 8 weeks. It's roughly that 2-month time period. Okay, then there's more flooring that has to go in, but prior to flooring, all the scaffolding has to come down. It's most likely a week and a half process to get that all down safely, because there's no way, shape, or form am I going to have any damage done to the walls, ceilings, or stained glass that is currently and has survived for the last year. So again, we're still talking about 8-10 weeks to get everything completed. My hope right now is in June, I hand the keys back over to Pastor Felicia and go, thank you so much. Give me at least a week before we have to do anything else. Please, please. So, are there any kinds of questions that you have for me currently as of the information that I've given you, or anything that you have in your mind at this time?
Patrick, before you answer the question, 2 things I want to highlight as well. We have 1/3 of a mile of pews. The kind of wood for those pews, Patrick and those guys look, because Patrick, as well as our roofer, they're committed to maintain the history of our church, so that we walk in and it doesn't look like something we haven't seen. And so through this process, he was able to get all of that refinished and done so that all the pews look like the same. It doesn't look like we have patch stuff. So I just wanted to highlight that, that it was 1/3 of a mile of pews. Moved off site along with our piano and all that. They even they went and bought a building to be able to move our organ pipes, our piano, our pews off site so that they might be safe and not be damaged further through the water, and all of that was there. The other thing I want to highlight when we talk about Amy, if you go to our church in our narthex, you can barely get through because of all the bags of plaster. That also causes an air quality issue. And so many may not know, Amy struggles with some health issues. There have been several days that she and I have not been able to work in the building just because of, these guys are walking around with masks, but because of all the plaster and all of the sanding and all of the other stuff. So when people talk about, oh, we should be able to be back, it should be easy, blah, blah, blah. No, because there's all kinds of stuff going around. We've had people trip. So I just wanted to highlight and, like I said, really let you know the kind of things that we've been dealing with, and highlight again ServPro, because they bought a building so that our things could be taken off site and protected, namely our piano, our organ pipes, our pews, and really fought with the insurance company to make sure that we maintain the historical aspects of our building.
Do we actually have some of the videos or the pictures?
Yeah, Frank, will
Or is
you
that
keep-
later?
Yeah, no, he's got them.
Oh.
Frank, if you'll show some more pictures, please, and show the video.
So this is the underside of the balcony. So you can see it's called blue board, but it's purple. Don't kill the messenger. But it's purple. So they put it all back after the new lights. You can see them in tandem going all the way down, and then finishing it up with a really, really beautiful plaster coat. So again, there's a lot of work that has been going on and is still currently going on. That's more plaster work. The 200 bales of insulation that my guys looked at me and said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, really. Let's go." That was installed and actually was completed this week, excuse me. So all the insulation is in. These are, I think they're almost completed. They are completed now, but this is a photo of them almost completed. So the building in which we were housing them.
Go back one, Frank.
All of your pews being housed over the winter time so that they could be sanded, stained, and refinished. So you're going to get I think they're actually really, really beautiful. So at this point, they're going to really pop, especially when they're all back in the same room. So let's go to the next one. This is actually the lights.
Next picture. Frank, next picture.
The new lights. So we kind of went a little bit out of order, so we actually had to reroute lights as well as run conduit. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty, but they wanted everything up to code. Certain things were not. They were done just because nobody really was looking, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So now we had to bring it all up to code. So we had some lights to replace the ones that were damaged, but also to make sure that you guys can see under the balcony now. So this is your attic space without any insulation, but the HVAC was completed. When you're up there and there's no lights and it's dark, it is kind of scary, yes. When I was up there taking down the chandeliers very early on in the project, I had a great respect for Dwayne, because even my knees were shaking at a certain point because I knew it was 45 feet down as I'm winching down 100-pound lights easy. So it made it very easy for me to make a decision to say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and build new catwalks up here. This is crazy. So let's move on to the next one. So this is a video I took this week. It's a drone. I have it on the inside of the attic space. You can kind of understand now the vastness of your attic space. It is huge. So this is all new blown-in insulation with the 3 new HVAC units. They're technically called air handlers, but because they don't put out heat, just the AC, the air conditioning. Our crew's installing the last bits of the insulation, me looking like a supervisor standing in the corner, staring at my phone. That's actually the cradle that holds up your entire steeple and that last third air handling unit. So that is a very good representation of what the attic looks like at this point. And as of, I believe, Tuesday, it will be sealed up, the last piece of the HVAC that we were using to, or the last excuse me, piece of the supply vent will be sealed up. It's actually how we were climbing in and out of the attic easily. They're going to button that up, so the only way that I can actually get up is, well, that handmade ladder that I love so much in the southern part of the balcony. So now, are there any kind of questions that you might have? Yes?
Can you tell us about some of the historical restoration that you had to do?
So the historical restoration, that would be mostly the pews, making sure that they are being brought back, because you have some pews that are actually older than this church, which is frankly one of the main pushing points to the insurance company, because they were looking at, well, why don't we just buy you new pews? And I said, I will let you know you're going to have a really hard fight. I didn't even let that question go to the board at that point. I said, yeah, I'm going to guess you're going to get a lot of pushback. Why don't we just go ahead and refinish them? So the pews primarily, a lot of times when you have plaster on a substrate, the insurance company will tend to be like, oh, we'll just throw up some drywall, get some texture on it, you'll be fine. I said, oh, nay. That's not how this is going to go. We need plaster back. It's how it was. They would like to be a historical building. That is going to cause many problems. Plus, by the way, just to remind you, you have to put it back the way it was. So I wouldn't say there's a whole lot of restoration going on. It was just a matter of conversations with them to make sure they did what was right to get it put back together the correct way.
Patrick?
Yeah.
Question for you. When the work was done in the HVAC in the attic, what was done to make sure all the wiring that goes to the speakers up there and the microphone wiring that goes up there, the speakers for the organ and the microphones, what care was done to make sure that was all kept in shape?
All of those were identified prior and basically bundled. What has happened through the roofing guys being up there and walking around and frankly trampling around in the attic, I cannot say. That's
Okay.
obviously a bridge we're going to have to cross once
Right.
we get some of the more of the plaster work completed.
And what's the approximate date to where those things can be tested, the audio and the testing the organ speakers and all that? When can people start entering and checking that? Because that's going to take some time.
Immediately. I would like it to be done.
No, I
immediately.
need a date, approximate date. There-
Next Monday.
No, you're still going to have your scaffolding up next Monday.
You're going to want to go on the scaffolding, I promise you.
But you can't play the organ and have all that sound appropriate and tune everything with the scaffolding and
Well, the
that dance
tuning
floor
and
in
everything
there.
will have to happen afterwards, but making sure that the speakers work
Right.
is definitely something we want to do immediately,
The
because I
dan-
promise
the-
you.
The dance floor will have to be down first as well.
Okay.
Because
we,
some
we
of
can
the,
have that discussion.
some
at
of the
that
speakers
point,
are
so-
above your dance floor, okay?
Understand, I see them.
So that has to be down.
But for us to make sure that they work, I don't think we would necessarily mean that we need to tune it. But I promise you,
But to test that.
I will
the
not
dance
be
floor-
able to get a
Right.
scissor lift in there once the dance floor is down. So making sure that they function first.
So when are you saying that the organ company needs to come in and that they can come in and reinstall all the pipes and test the speakers? What's an approximate date?
I would say those things need to be separate.
Okay, that's going to cost more money to do it that way, but.
Well, it's going to cost even
Okay,
more
get-
money to get a spider lift to get up on the
E-
speaker.
Email me with a date for both of those, please.
Sounds good. Please.
Flooring, you mentioned flooring issues. What was the condition of the floor in the balcony, and what was the condition of the floor, damage or whatever, of the main floor of the sanctuary?
So all the carpet has been removed at this point throughout the balcony, the sanctuary, the narthex, and the both stairways, both the southern stairways.
In the chapel.
And in the chapel, and the choir hallway.
Oh,
So everything has been removed at this point. Everything has been approved to be able to be put back for carpet purposes. At this point in time, are we good with going with the narthex, speaking about it? So the narthex at this time is not going to have carpet replaced on it. It's a Italian travertine tile that we're going to look to have refinished and put kind of like a non-slip coating on it so that we don't have problems that they originally had in, I believe, the 70s, 80s, something like that. Is that what it was? 80s or 90s? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So then it is very gorgeous. It's going to really add to your property and just add to the overall feel of the building itself. So that portion is not going to be replaced. It's going to be refinished and then kind of put down, like I said, like a non-slip coating so that it's not as slick during rain, during snow, so the winter and springtime. The carpeting will go up the stairways, across the balcony, and then into the sanctuary and onto the into the chapel and to the where the pulpit is and everything like that. The flooring underneath the pews was never damaged. Okay, it was never damaged. However, I don't know if it's been shared with them or not at this point. I'm a very visual person, and in my head I can already see your church being put back together at this point. And I would have been very disappointed in myself if I were to give you back a brand new church and then I can see, 50, 60-year-old scuff marks underneath the pews. So I was actually able to negotiate to get that flooring refinished within the carpet budget itself. So as kind of a gift, because frankly, take this with a grain of salt. I could have taken that as profit like that. So I decided, hey, I'm going to get this redone. So the sanctuary floor will be redone, the hard surface under the pews, the carpeting will be redone. The balcony right now is perfectly fine. Obviously it is a little bit older, but it has seen less traffic. So we're going to just kind of clean it up and, I don't want to say buff it up, but we're going to clean it up and kind of finish it so that it looks nice. Okay?
Friends, I don't know if there's one final question, but
There's
remember
more questions.
Okay, but Justin, he's got to get on the plane and go.
Okay, I'll ask them to you guys then.
Okay. I want to take one final question, and then I want to honor that we told you all this wouldn't be very, very long. And we still need to talk about a main issue around the steeple. That is the critical reason why we need to talk to you today. And so I want to take one final question for Patrick. And Patrick, thank you for your time. We know you have a plane to
Hopefully catch.
To
With
catch.
the storm.
And then I definitely want to make sure that we have time. I understand that there are more questions about what's going on internally and all of that. We are committed to making sure that the sound and all this other stuff gets worked out, because we know how much we've grown online since we've been out of our building, and all of that stuff is critical. And this is great grant writing season as well, and so we need to know what other monies and things we ought to be asking for. So I want to do one more question on this, and I want to get to the steeple. I'm going to ask the board that as you make your presentation that we keep that kind of snappy and going, because I want to honor the fact that folks didn't expect to stay a long time today, and then there'll be time afterwards to talk. Michelle?
I'm sorry, I'm just really, I'm a lifelong member. I was baptized, my parents were married there. I just want to thank you so much
You're very
for
welcome.
putting my church back together the way it was.
You're very welcome.
Will you all join me again in thanking Patrick, and as I said, for
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
and as he's mentioned, the biggest thing has been that he's really worked hard. First thing he did was secure our stained glass windows, but he's really worked hard to put our church back and better to the way to make sure that we kept the history in our church the way that it was, and that the insurance company couldn't kind of sell us all this cheap stuff, and we'd have been coming back again in 20 years with no recourse. So Patrick, again, thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Safe trip.
Frank, if you could advance the slide to the slide that says the steeple discovery. Nope, the one that says the steeple discovery.
Oh, yeah.
Skip, there we go. All right. This has been a source of a lot of consternation and probably misinformation, so let's clarify this today. Let me precede that by saying the last several months you've seen the roof has been partially coppered. The process of doing the roof was putting on the new 3/4-inch treated plywood. That was the underlayment that replaced old cedar that was blown away. On top of the plywood was something called ice and water shield. That's that black rubberized substance you see. Once the ice and water shield went on, the building was watertight. So that the copper's not part of the water tightness, if you will. That allowed Patrick to start working on the inside, and he would have been quicker, but the insurance issue slowed him down. Now, you also notice that a good portion of the east side elevation is coppered, but it seems to stop as it gets near the steeple. And the west side has not yet been started for the same reason. The coppering of the roof, if you noticed how fast it went up when they were doing that east side, those guys could hang that copper really super quick. But why did we stop? We stopped because there was a steeple issue. The first issue was insurance related. The insurance company said, well, nothing's wrong with your steeple. We're not going to repay that. Here's what I've learned, by the way, about insurance companies. The first answer is always no, and then you negotiate, and most of the time we were successful in getting to yes. So the first thing was, well, we're not going to replace the copper on your steeple. And our roofer said, oh, yes, you are. If we're replacing the copper on the roof, we're replacing the copper everywhere. So that battle was fought. We're now going to replace the copper on the steeple. That means taking down the old decorative copper that was on the steeple. And that exposes the I-beams, the steel I-beams that are the spire is the proper word, by the way, are the spire. And that's what you see all rusted there in that picture. The spire itself has 8 legs. Think of it as like a stop sign laying down flat with a leg coming up from each of the corner. Several of those legs, 2 or 3 of them, were highly corroded. That's what 100 years of weather will do. Now, it was not visible because it was covered by the copper cladding. So when the copper cladding comes down, then we see these severely corroded I-beams. Well, now you got to do something about it. Well, we had a long fight with the insurance company, and it was their of the opinion that this was not storm related, and I can't disagree with them. This is 100 years of wear and tear. We hoped to get them to, go along with us. Then the answer stayed no on that one. So what the roofer did was bring in a team of iron workers, and they cut away the bad, and they put in new iron, and the city's been out to approve it, and we're good to go. And now they have got most of the steel, or most of the copper, recladded. In fact, I was in front of the church yesterday working on a window well when a pickup truck pulled up with more of the copper decorations on it. If you can go now back, Frank. These are the types of the copper decorations that are on the steeple. This new cross, which is laying next to the old cross, is going to go on the very top pretty soon, and Jen swears she's going to go up there and say a prayer when that goes on. I am not. So.
Just for scale purposes, what's the height of that cross approximately? Because up there, standing on the ground, it looks
It would be. 3.5 feet. No. Oh, for the scale, the cross itself? Yeah, the cross. Oh, it would stand this high, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I expect to have the old one for the history room. That's not going to get recycled. Jen's going to go up there. There's scaffolding all the way up there when it's mounted, and she will say a prayer for us. I'll say a prayer for her. At ground level, yeah. I'll be there cheering. That's a picture of the scaffolding. You've all seen that. That was erected. It looks like Elgin has 2 tower buildings now. That was erected to work on the steeple. That's all going to be done in the next few days. And that scaffolding will be able to come down. Then they can start working on the west wing, or on the west side and the east side, and finish the coppering. There. That's the roof story and the steeple story.
And that brings us to the next part of the steeple story. And the primary reason, in terms of transparency, this discussion has been going on. Discussion we're having today has been going on with the insurance company since September. We received a denial on payment for the repair because they said it was pre-existing condition. They are replacing the copper. It has to match the roof that was destroyed. And it was the steel work was discovered when the copper came down, and when it was discovered, everyone agreed it had to be replaced to make it structurally sound. No one with any integrity would have clad around it. We've been in months of debate about should this be covered? Because it was approved by code to replace, the steeple stood, as corroded as it is, the steeple stood through the hurricane, or through the tornado, or microburst, or whatever it actually was, but it was not what you'd want up for the next 100 years. They have, after the second months of really heated discussion, and they didn't want meetings recorded, the insurance company would not allow us to record our meetings, and they did not require an inspection, blah, blah, blah. They've held us off for three months now without a final decision. And 3 weeks ago, we received the final denial. They will not cover the steeple, even though it had to be repaired structurally. They say pre-existing condition. I've belonged to the church for 64 years, so this corrosion has occurred over the course of a lifetime. We've asked, were we negligent in our maintenance? No, there was not a way to get to this area for regular inspection, but it's not going to be covered. And every day that they have held us off in discussion, the scaffolding around the steeple is $2,000 a day. $2,000 a day when there wasn't work taking place, waiting on the insurance company word, has created quite an overage on the estimated cost of replacing the steeple. If you look at the slide, the total steeple cost at this point right now for the repair, it's not including the copper, that's covered, but for the repair work and the scaffolding to allow the repair work to take place is at $160,000. Precision, which I wish you had a chance to meet Jeremy, who has the same kind of integrity and same kind of knowledge and same kind of patience that Patrick does as it concerns the roof and our questions, and allowing us to go up on the roof and see it for ourselves so that we can say, this isn't someone trying to put something over on us. They've battled with the insurance company mightily. They've battled with to make sure that all the permits and everything were absolutely in place and not drag their feet, because $2,000 a day is overage. And Precision has agreed that they are going to cover the steeple overage through just grace. They don't have to. We would be expected to pay it. But this Precision Roofing Company, Restoration Roofing Company, is assuming $40,000 of our overage, which leaves us with a total bill to our church. Our church is $120,000. And we bring you to this point that we've looked into grants. We've looked into, in the last several weeks, we've talked to contacts. Pastor Felicia has created a network of relationships, but the bottom line is, in 90 days, a bill will come due from Precision Roofing for $120,000. So we're here today to discuss what our next steps are. This is not an emergency. God didn't bring us this far to not be a part of the restoration of our church, and we're moving forward. This is Plan A is taking place today, and Carol's going to kind of explain about one question that keeps coming up, and us being congregants as well, but a lot of times people will come to us and say, are you going to ask for more money? Are you going to ask for more? We're not asking for anything. God is helping guide us to bring our church back to wholeness, and our responsibility in legacy building is to put that steeple up. It would have cost 5 times more to take the steeple down. When you saw in that attic all the black ironwork, that's part of what supports our roof, is what's supporting the steeple. We inquired immediately about being able to let's remove the steeple. If it's going to cost us, insurance not going to cover, it would cost 5 times more to create the infrastructure to hold the ceiling up. So, with that having been said, we're going to talk about our legacy to the future and the steeple.
You gotta love a good pie chart, and that's not just because I was a math teacher, but no, this is very simple. It's very straightforward. The monies with regard to the donations that were given, you see it represented here in the pie chart, and You know, we've had grants. Impressively, with the orange chunk, that is the other United Methodist churches that gave us money, one of which was from a sale of them having to close their church, and that money was donated to us. Teresa Nolette, God rest her soul, gave our church a significant donation in her estate, and that is represented by the green. The rest of it, you can get your mic or your glass out at home because it's very small in your print. But what I want to just give your attention to is the pink. There were only 10 members of our congregation, of which we state that we have 170 members of our church, 83 that have pledged and give on a regular basis. There was only 10 members that are included in here to the tune of $6,000, and one of those members gave $2,000. So that's all. This speaks for itself in the pie chart. So that's all that I'm going to give to you with regard to that. You can look at it closer when you can get a magnifying glass at home to see the other pieces. So, absolutely.
There's one part of the pie chart that says, I think Friends of, the pink part, it's real tiny, but people often wonder, in the pink part, it says Friends of FUMC.
No, that's great.
There were, Friends of FUMC, there were 7 givers. That's our bishop.
I had microphone. Oh. No.
Just the Friends of, just real quickly though, but so unbelievably supportive and lovely. The number of other United Methodist Church that came to our need in time of disaster is represented in the pie chart also, where it says Friends of FUMC, 2,300. It was 7 givers. It was our bishop, the cabinet. It was our DS. It was all private funds of people that our leadership came the day after, and wrote personal checks and shared. So we've gotten some brilliant support from our fellow Methodists.
All right. Follow me, if you can, on the page that looks like this. It'll be up on the screen. I hate to keep saying no to Phil Broxham, but this sheet's not nearly, this chart's not nearly as complicated as it might look. I want to start with this overpowering thought that has occurred to me. We're going to have $6.2, $6.3, almost $6.4 million spent on this church over the last year and a half. That's the West Wing redo, along with everything related to the roof. Of course, the lion's share of that's paid for by the insurance company. But I'm realizing the fact that in a few weeks, we're going to have 2/3 of a brand new church. The sanctuary is going to be new from top to bottom. The West Wing is new from top to bottom. Air conditioning? Air conditioning, electrical, carpet, church pews refinished, on and on. A plaster job in the sanctuary that was aging and cracking will now have all fresh plaster on it. Just many things that we couldn't have done on our own as a congregation. But I guess we're blessed with disasters, if you want to work at that. And so much of this has been financed by other people, largely the insurance company, but you can see in that pie chart, ordinary people. A friend of mine from Del Webb, who's Jewish, handed me a $100 check and said, "I'm sorry what happened to your church." We've had gifts like that coming from all directions, and that's all going into that Building Development Fund. So as we go down, and part of the like new church, we've all forgotten about it, but in the middle of COVID, we put a $250,000 boiler in this church. It turns out boilers only last about 95 years. I know, who thought? And this governance board was prepared to stand in the pulpit and ask for money to help defray a $250,000 boiler when COVID hit. So we quietly just replaced the boiler. That meant the endowment took a hit, but no one was asked to pledge for that. So think about all that. And the boiler cost isn't even reflected on this sheet. So really, if you look at this sheet, we start out with the 6.2 million insurance payments, which cover the 6.2 million contractor payments. And then you see the other things about the steeple and the lighting project and the phone security. The bottom line is, all those other little things that we wanted to get done, the security piece and the rest of it, that is being paid for, in essence, by these various gifts and grants and sums of money that came to us from these various sources that were on the pie chart. What's left at the bottom, unpaid, is $121,298. Remember what our cost of the steeple is? $120,000. We'd have been home clear and clean if it weren't for that doggone spire. So that's what we're looking at. That's what the long and short of this chart is.
And the big thing is that all three of us can speak to this. This isn't a crisis. This is Plan A and getting us back in our building, happy and whole. But the thing is, the spire does represent hope for not just us and our church. The carillon doesn't just represent pleasant music for us here in this room, but it's our legacy to continue to share it with the community, to continue to share it as a centerpiece of Holy Hill in downtown Elgin, and to make our presence known both visually and auditorially, the music that the carillon provides. And what we're proposing, or what we're asking, because we in 90 days will have a $120,000 bill due, and our Plan A is to appeal to our legacy building selves and appeal to our gratitude for what God has already done for us and what we can continue to do for each other and the community by sharing our church with the world. If you'll look at the last page, if you'll flip to the screen, Frank, that's how we complete this together. This is our proposal for, not fundraising, but for legacy building. We have some donation categories, and we've tried to build in just what this means. This isn't just paying for iron. This isn't just paying for finishing our building. This is paying for the legacy of First United Methodist Church, just like those that came before us did. The steeple completion goal is $120,000. We're hoping to have two donations of $25,000 or plus, and they would be considered the Spire Circle. And the Spire Circle are the anchor donors who will help us crown the completion of our restoration. We're hoping to have at least four, we're praying at least four, carillon sustainers of $10,000, stewards of the voice of our church, encouraging the music of our faith so that it continues to ring across Elgin. Sentinel stewards are $5,000 gifts that would be protectors of our historic skyline and the structural integrity of our landmark. It's to get us back. When you look, a lot of what you really need to say to people, we're the church with we used to say green roof. Now we can go back to saying the church with the copper roof. They know where we're at. They know how to find us. And that's a part of the skyline, and that's legacy. And then we actually are hoping that our skyline partners are $1,000 gifts. If you're able, if you have enough oil in your home. And the other thing that we want to emphasize is that just like the woman that was going to lose her children to slavery, we're asking for broad donation, participation. And if the oil in your home totals $5, please consider it, because this is hoping to build and crown the church and get us back in. We never want to go back in the building the way we were. We want our doors blowing off, just like they've been doing. We want to be out in the community, but we want to know and help share where people, so they can find us. That's our proposal. I don't know if you kids want to kick off anything. This is, Yes.
I'd like to share a couple things.
okay.
One is, I hope that you've seen through this the importance of the United Methodist Connection. When we talk about the annual conference, that means that we understand as United Methodists, we don't do this alone. People often complain, why do we have to pay an apportionment? The apportionment is what got us that $10,000. It was our bishop and the people on site for disaster relief that came out of the apportionment, and then the bishop's call to our siblings in Christ that came out. And as was mentioned, one of the churches sold their parsonage and tithed $32,000. They sold their parsonage for $325,000 and gave us the tithe on that parsonage for us. I received that check the first week. So one is, I just want to highlight that, and then all of the work that we've had for this. And I know that the cabinet prays for us daily. It was through Arlene Christopherson, some of you all know her, connecting our DS that connected us to the National Fund for Sacred Spaces that opened up some potential for grants and things like that. I had said I wasn't going to write a grant for the steeple. I have an idea for one, but really, folks, this is on us. And as I thought about this, because I know when I thought about what would we give, I thought, I don't know. I was reminded of something that my mom did. In black churches, there are women's days. They have a regular women's day every year. The donation for Women's Day is $200. The donation for Men's Day is $100. My mom, my mom, a housekeeper, often did not have in her kitty $200. And not only that, my mother needed a new dress. So she's at $300 and something. What my mother did is she hit my dad up for the dress money. She hit me and she talked to my sister and I about giving the money for the donation, her $200. My brothers and sister, my youngest sister, had different things to do. So friends, when we think about how do we help cover things for our church, I don't want us to look at only what we could do. There might be some friends and some other people that might be willing to jump in. As Al said, a person gave him $100. I was sharing with, last year I remember I was sharing with Corey Dixon that the Lord had blessed us and that all we had to pay was $2,500 for our, before the steeple thing happened, all we had to pay was $2,500 for our, you have to pay some money up front, deductible. Yeah. And Corey started laughing and I said, why is that funny? And he said, because Second Baptist deacons just authorized to give you $2,500 to cover that. Yeah. And so every step of the way, the King of Glory Lutheran Church on Randall, every month they give 3% of their offerings to an organization in town. It just so happened last April, they decided while the pastor was away that we would receive that 3%, which worked out to almost $2,700. And so over and over again, the United Methodist Church, the annual conference, our sister churches in town, people have often just come and asked us what it is that we need. Some people, if you notice, we saw I got asked at the last minute about where our church was, and someone came out from the Daily Herald, and someone sent us a check because of that. So I'm saying that all to say, I told y'all I have to stop saying it. My mentor has told me, because I've been being coached through this by fund development officers, has said to me, I need to stop saying that I hate asking for money, because I do. And it's part of our stewardship, generosity and those kinds of things. And like I said, you'd be really surprised at what God will do, as I said this morning, with the little that's in our hand. So with that said, I know it's long. Thank you all for being here this long. But I want to open it up for some questions. And like I said, if you can't do $25,000, we understand. Help us pray those people in and give whatever God lays on your heart to give. So right now I want to ask some questions.
Al, you said there are 8 legs that support this steeple, right?
Yeah.
Did they replace all 8 or just a couple of them?
No, 2 or 3, and just a section of each of them. They cut out the rusted part and bolted in and welded in new steel.
So they used the same material that rusted out? Right?
No.
But what I'm saying is there a different material? What's going to prevent this from happening to the existing ones? You know, the 100-year-old ones? What's going to prevent this from another place on them?
No.
that was already there?
No, it's a different technology.
Yeah.
It was a different technology. Back then, if you have steel and copper connect, it causes corrosion. And so what they did is that when they replaced those new pieces, what I understand is they also coated it. Back then, there was no technology around how you coat those things and that. They coated that, and they also placed something in between the steel and the copper to keep all of that corrosion going. But what our roofer tells us is that the miracle was that storm that just sucked up our roof and all of that, that steeple held no matter what. We're having those 2 or 3 spires damaged, and you all can see the damage in the presentation. But yeah, they went, when they put everything back in, they also brought 2026 technology in to keep the rest of that stuff from corroding the way that it had before.
Are they doing,
Yeah,
are,
yeah.
So sorry to ask, is the whole steeple being replaced or just pieces that are being replaced? Like the whole, I saw the bits and pieces that were being redone. Is the whole outer copper?
The entire copper, from top to bottom, is being replaced. The small portions of the steel had to be replaced. And then that will be covered in copper and won't be seen again.
are they doing any type of cathodic protection so that you're warned when you have
Yes,
a corrosion?
That's what Felicia.
Yeah, that's what I
Right,
didn't know how
but
to.
is it, how do you know that it's working? Do they have an electronic, something hooked up to it so you know it's working, or is it just
No,
faith?
They
Faith,
separate the unlike metals.
understood. But they didn't replace all of the old metal, did they?
No.
So what's going to keep it? How are you going to know that,
Let me say this again.
no?
All the old copper came down, all the new copper's going up. The steel that had to be replaced is being replaced. Where the copper or the zinc and the steel were in contact, and the cathartic, deterioration was happening,
Right.
they have separated that
Understood.
with barriers,
Okay.
with buffers.
The question is, the steel that wasn't replaced, the 3 pieces that corroded so bad that they had to be cut out, understood, but what's remaining, it's only on borrowed time before it's corroded. Did they do anything with that steel
think-
so you can detect cathodic?
Yes.
Okay, well, how does that work?
That we'll have to get it, but we know that it was done, and let me just say,
They know how it works.
right, but,
Know what's going on.
yeah, but let me say this, we fought with the insurance company, you heard how much, since September of this year. Part of it, the fight that happened, was that we had to call out a structural engineer on the steeple. So Justin, here's my answer to your question. We know, and not only do we know, the conference, because we had to bring them in, knows that we've got to keep an eye on that steeple. We need, I know that that's why I wish Jeremy was here. We don't have the detail of all that, but we will make sure we get that answer and get it to you.
Let's say this. Once this was discovered, we had the city involved, we had the roofer involved, we had steel experts involved, we had a structural engineer involved, all of whom saw to it that the steeple was stabilized before the copper goes back on.
Fully understand, just making sure that we're taking precautions.
I think we've done all the things we rightfully
It's
should
the
have done.
precautions for the future.
Yeah.
Because the technology is extremely expensive to monitor that, so you don't have to visually.
I'm sorry. Justin, will you do me a favor? Will you email me what it is that you know about that thing so that we can follow up with our,
Yeah, I will.
yes.
Yeah.
Who has the next, go ahead, Deanna.
Is we must understand, we're going to see this now. We have to predict what's happening in the future. Future generations that are going to enjoy this church of ours.
That's the
Number
goal.
one. And number two, I thank everybody on the committee who has worked on this. You've had no compensation whatsoever. And I, for one, and I know everybody, appreciate what you've done.
I have been compensated heavily in Doritos.
We've lived on Doritos and Diet Coke. That's how we live.
The question came up earlier about the organ. Yeah. To our knowledge, the organ is fine. The front of the church took no water. It was all in the back of the church. The organ has been sealed off and tarped off and encased in wood and plastic. We believe, we plug it in, fire it up.
And if I could just highlight there too, again, the quality of people that God sent. You know, the insurance company wanted us to clean the ceiling in the using this like fine blast of powder, and Patrick and those guys were like, no, you're gonna ruin our organ over and have all this dust through all of our stuff. And so we've been very blessed. I hope you can see some of that. We've been very blessed by the people that we've had to deal with. They don't teach this in seminary.
Jeremy has the same kind of
Yep, okay.
Do we have thought as to when our return to the church?
As Patrick said, it would be, like he said, June. That's what Patrick said. June. Yes. Yes.
Not the earliest.
No. The issue is, like we said, here's the issue. If we just go back through the timeline, July, Patrick puts in a claim. He has the same equipment that the insurance company has on assessing what's needed in the place. The insurance company doesn't even give us an answer back till September. And that's because we had to get the annual conference involved and remind them that they could lose the business of 750 churches if they don't get on the stick. The initial response back is $1 million off of what we need because they want to just put squares of drywall in the places where we had to open up for drawer, and they want to do everything on the cheap. Now we're back in the negotiations. They agree in early October. Yep, you all are right. They don't send the first check till late November. When we started all of this, the way that it's gone is they sometimes they play games rather than like send us the money via wire. What they do is they send us a check via FedEx or what. It's been a whole game. Patrick is off by 3 months, at least 3-4 months, because of what the insurance company has done. 5 months we have been going back and forth with the insurance company over the steeple. I tease Pat every week about who's climbing up on the steeple to see, because apparently the insurance company said somebody should have been climbing up there, pulling back the copper to see that the stuff was corroded. And I'm like, what fool was doing that? And so I just want to give people, let me tell you something. No one is more anxious in this room to be back in their church than me. I love you all. I miss having an hour or so before church starts to sit in my office and talk to God and to do all that. I walk in the sanctuary and I look like, no one misses that more than me. Like I said, this has been like being pregnant. All these little things have had to happen in the background. I'm serious. All this has been like being, like, you don't see a baby until like you almost there. It's been like that. Like I said, can you imagine, 1/3 of a mile of pews. They had started a couple months ago on the plaster work, and then it was so cold that they had to stop. Everything has to be done to make sure they protect our stained glass windows and all of that. So we're saying June. Like I said, Patrick back in the fall really wanted us to be in by no later than Easter. And it's the monkey business with the insurance company.
It's not just that either, too. And some of you know, some of you may not know, but that big, huge rain we had last week, Al was there, was it last week?
Oh, yeah, last Thursday caused some additional flooding.
3:30 in the morning, and Carol and I were there at 4:30 in the morning, and we had 4 flooding areas. And so...
30 gallons of water.
Just the
But
kitchen.
let's say this, the kitchen we think we solved with the window well yesterday.
Yeah.
But the other flooding was all directly related to the construction and will go away once the construction is done.
Once the roofing is done. So while we hope June, there's always these, because they had to monitor the plaster to make sure that the plaster that was newly
And some of it had to come down.
that was not going to have to, and now some of it does have to come.
Right.
So it is, when people want a date,
Yep. Justin?
you can't.
No, thank you. Is the plan for when we move in that the interior will be 100% complete or substantially complete? The meaning-
100%.
So the organ will be fully ready, the grand piano will be fully ready, the sound system will be fully functional. That's when we'll move in.
That is the hope and plan. Yeah, the hope and plan is that we'll be at that stage. Just so you know, Justin, what's the guy who's the organ man? Steve was at the church a couple weeks ago talking to us about when you think you guys are going to be in and all of that other kind of stuff. Yeah, so he came by. Yeah, he came by the church a couple weeks ago, called Amy and all of that. So we are sensitive to.
There's a lot of, I know it's minimized, but there's a lot of work to the 30-some speakers that augment that.
Right. So here's right. So here, and it's not just that, Justin. It is the ministry of this church that has to get going, and it's going to be all hands on deck. So really enjoy this time, enjoy Easter and all of that. But we'll be asking people to get involved in committees to help us, just do little things around the church that we can do. Well, then maybe what we do is we get some people to work with you and train up, and ECC has offered us some interns and all that. But, beloved, it's going to take not only the money, but when we get back, it's all hands on deck, because I can imagine the first time that we walk in that church, we won't be the only ones walking in that church. Marcy?
The great hymn writer has expressed exactly what's gone on here for an hour and a half. To God be the glory, great things he has done, so great our rejoicing in Jesus his Son. And when we get back into that beautiful building, may that be our goal.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. And like I said, the biggest thing now is we need you all to pray on what, and I'm saying pray because you'd be amazed at what God will do. God laid on our heart, like my heart. He gave me a number. He gave Adrian a number. And believe it or not, Adrian's number was higher than mine. And I thought, we don't have it. And what I said to myself, this is why the sermon was for me, all we have, this is just what we have to give to this. And almost immediately, something came in to be put in our hands that we could make the pledge, that we could make good on the pledge that Adrian had said. And so I just want to invite you all. This is not a governance board issue. This is not a church issue, because 90 days from now, we will have this bill. And people say, well, where's the annual conference? The annual conference does not have the money that it used to have. A good portion of that is because when the Boy Scouts made their settlement with the victims, they did not take the churches with them, which means that all of the United Methodist churches that had Boy Scout troops and all of that were not a part of that. A couple years ago, there was a negotiation around that, because up until that time, all of our endowments, all of our buildings, all of our parsonages were at stake for those people to sue. Each annual conference in the country, 18 annual conferences, pledged a certain amount. Our annual conference pledged $785,000. That money, the bishop did not want our conference to be the only one that hadn't paid their portion. That money came immediately out of the annual conference budget. So that the annual conference just doesn't have that. Every church is aging and all of those other things. And I found out, since we went through this, there were 6 churches in crisis. We just happened to be the biggest one, but 6 churches had claims against the insurance. And the conference, continuously pays that and works with people and all that. So I want you to know, beloved, this is on us and on God. This is us bringing God the little that we have and trusting that as we pour oil, that God will meet that need. But 90 days from now, we will have a $120,000 bill that we've got to pay. Are there any final questions?
I just have one small question.
Yep.
The warehouse where the pews are, is that part of the, is that covered where,
By insurance?
the insurance?
Yeah, Patrick had that all approved, because what he wanted to make sure was the pipes, the piano, all that not be damaged. And he got that approved early on, that they could get the building and move all of our stuff there.
I was just curious to know if that was a separate.
Nope.
Or-
And the transportation, because it's a third of a mile of pews. And actually, by Patrick and those guys stepping in, the insurance company sent someone that thought, oh, they could take the pews to Michigan and figure all this out. They wanted almost $300,000 to do that. And Patrick, because he made that adjustment, was $150,000. And so, like I said, we have been blessed to have the guys here. Jeremy talks about the fact that when he was on his way to deal with a disaster in St. Louis, and someone happened to tell him about our church, and he felt compelled to turn around. He was almost to St. Louis. He was 3 hours out. So, like I said, I don't know if there are any questions. Please send us an email, ask a question. If you know somebody that can help, please do that. And I think that that's it. Is there any other?
Receiving a letter tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, you guys will get everybody will get a letter from me and the governance board saying, hey, would you please pray about this? Before you all leave, would you just mind joining us in a word of prayer? Okay. And, the leaders work hard at the time, but I know that there are folks in this, y'all, I know that there's some praying folks in this place. Will one of you lift up a prayer to thank God for all God has done and to pray for the situation that we're in now?
I would like to pray.
Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you that we get to be here in this space today. Lord, I thank you for each and every one of these hearts, each and every one of these people who is here that is making up the body that is your church. And Lord, we pray that in this tabernacle season, you would help us and sustain us until that time that we get back to where that temple is, where we can really truly worship you. But Lord, we thank you for your sustaining power throughout the wilderness. I thank you that I have a beautiful, wonderful family whose prayers are so powerful. And Lord, we know that all things are possible with you. So Lord, with the little oil that we have, Heavenly Father, we pray that you would pour it out, that you would multiply it. We know that you will fill our cups until they run over, and that we may dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So Heavenly Father, we thank you that no matter where we go, you are with us. Wherever two or more of us are gathered, we are there, and you are there among us. And we pray just guidance and continued faith. Thank you for all of the beautiful blessings. Bless our neighbors and bless our efforts as we continue. Have us back on your timeline, Lord, and we pray that it will be in your time and we can accept that. Blessings.
Amen. Thank you.